Okay, all hands on deck. Let's kick off here. Welcome, folks, to the May 18th HR Board Classification Subcommittee meeting. My name is Mark Bleckman, Chair of the HR Board. Let me confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. HR Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Diane Doyle,
Yes.
John Ferrara,
Yes.
Anthony Antico.
Yes.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tracy Blaze, Town Administrator.
Here.
Thank you. We have no other anticipated speakers on the agenda. So let's move ahead to the introduction of the remote meeting. Good morning. This open meeting of the Newbury HR Board Classification Subcommittee is being conducted virtually, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the current state of the emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not, however, ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment as it is not a public hearing. For this meeting, the Newbury HR Board Classification Subcommittee is convening by Zoom meeting link as posted on the agenda on the town's website. All the materials for this meeting, except any executive session materials, are available on the website, and we recommend the members and the public follow the agenda as posted on the website. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I'll go down the line of board members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. We can disregard that, given there are only 5 of us in a meeting. Please remember to speak clearly and in ways that help generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you, and be sure to state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Is there a motion to open?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Diane Doyle,
Yes.
John Ferrara,
Yes.
Tony Antico,
Yes.
Mark Bleckman, yes. The meeting is officially open. And with that, let me turn the discussion over to Tracy Blaze, Town Administrator. Tracy, if you would give us a just kind of a brief overview or rundown as to where we are and why you've asked for this classification subcommittee to meet.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have recently hired a new Council on Aging director. When I went through the hiring process, I interviewed a number of candidates. One in particular, the woman that we hired, was very well suited for the position based on her previous experience. And as we entered into the negotiations, working within the classification schedule that was established, actually, Diane, I'm not exactly sure what the year was. We had looked at it previously. It was quite a while ago.
It's been quite a while.
Yeah, it was, it became very apparent that I wasn't going to get anyone to come. So I did review the Mass Municipal Personnel Association, Human Resources Association information, and then I did my own review into surrounding communities within the Essex County structure, which I find is more relevant when looking at comparative data. And we weren't even, our classification, we were well below anyone around us. But in particular, I compared Georgetown, Groveland, Merrimack, Newburyport, Raleigh, Salisbury, Boxford. So we weren't close. So we were able to come to a negotiation. But it was very close to being outside of the range. And the agreement was that she would come, but within the probationary period, the 6-month probationary period, she would like to be given consideration for a raise to be more in line with surrounding communities. I thought that was very fair, given that, you know, I didn't know how she was gonna perform. And, you know, certainly it was time that we look at the classification anyway. So she has been here for a number of months. The performance has been outstanding. We have seen more programming for our seniors during COVID than I think Newbury has ever had in the past. So needless to say, I'm very, very pleased with performance as well. But it's time to look at this, to give it another review. I think, you know, we've never really, other than when you initially did the whole classification schedule, I don't think we've taken a global look at everything and reviewed everything. It's more, it seems like it happens when positions become vacant that we look at them. So here we are again. So that's, there are a few minor changes proposed to the job description. Primarily, I think the one that would affect the classification is the education requirement. And reviewing other communities, it seems to be something that they are requiring a bachelor's degree in a related field. And, you know, having someone with that skill this is the first time I think we've had someone with those skills, and it seems to be effective in this role.
Mm-hmm.
So I would recommend that we memorialize that.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate that. Let me open it up for introductory questions from any members of the HR board. Diane Doyle, anything for Tracy?
No, I think that's a great summary. I don't actually have the date that the last time this job was reviewed. I would also point out that the staff has completely transitioned over there. We've had, I think the program coordinator recently left. She retired. We have a new staff member there. We have a new van driver. I mean, I think Tracy, as she's pointed out, the person that's filled the position as the director has done, she's very excited about, you know, bringing it kind of up to date and with new programming and new staff. I think, you know, I have nothing but good things to say about her as well. So
just as an aside, I've got here a date of April 2014 on the job description. Does that suggest that that's the last time this position was rated, or no? Was that when the job was created?
I don't think I think that was a date that we sort of revised the job descriptions and just, that was a global sort of update to a new set. I have marked in my, my job factor classification, I'm marking the date that we do review these moving forward, and I don't have a date. So that would tell me that it's prior to, say, 2014, 15.
Yeah, I came in 2011 and we have not reclassified this during my tenure.
Yeah.
This is probably a 10-plus-year-old classification, which makes it one of the oldest classifications in our system, I would think, to be reviewed. So certainly the time seems appropriate. Okay, thank you, Diane. John Ferrara, any introductory questions or comments?
No, I do not. I do not. I think a good summary, and we should get ahead with the description.
Thank you. Tony Antico, anything for Tracy?
No, I have no comments this time.
Okay, I just got one thing real quick. As we've discussed with a couple of these roles, Tracy, just so we understand the org chart, if you will, would you just, this job description describes the individual as reporting to you as the TA, correct? That's the solid line. So is there a double solid line into the COA Board of Directors? Is it a dotted line to the BOAs? How would you describe that? Double solid?
It's funny, we have a few circumstances where we have boards or committees, whether elected or appointed. And it's like, okay, how do these interconnect? And basically, I think that the council, she would answer to them, for lack of a better term, in terms of, okay, programming, what do the seniors want? What is the community looking for? They're functioning in a liaison position is more of, what they want to see the program, how,
Charter.
what offerings, what feedback they're getting, all of those types of things. Like, I certainly would not be at all qualified to say to Cindy, oh, you need to do, a yoga program, or you're not providing the right nutritional programming, or, that's way outside of my scope of expertise. So they look at the more detailed things. She reports to me in an operational perspective, budgets, funding, personnel matters. So that's the line in terms
Okay.
of the Select Board Town Administrator Act.
Right, but from the org chart point of view, she rolls up under you
Yep.
with all the normal requirements that any senior manager would. But
Yep.
in terms of charter and programming, it's the Board of Directors. Okay, good, thank you. That's all I had. All right, if there's nothing else, let's move to our first factor, which is complexity. Does everyone have the factors in front of them? Okay, we've all been through this a number of times. I don't think I need to talk about unless anyone feels it's required. I don't think we need to talk too much about the definition of each factor. We certainly understand what they are. So let's just jump into it. Complexity, judgment and decision-making. Middle of the range, a 3 is somewhat complex. Assigns projects required, some analysis and planning. Exceptions are analyzed and resolved by changes to standard procedures. Decisions involve identification of alternatives to improve procedures. A 4 is complex. Work may require modification of existing procedures. Analysis and planning are integral parts of the position. Exceptions require in-depth analysis and resolved by changes to administrative procedures. The decisions made are exceptions to standard practice. 5 is highly diverse and complex. We can see what that means, the 3 bullet points. And 6 is policy formulation. Tracy, your thoughts?
I always struggle with this one because there is policy formulation involved with the position for sure, but she wouldn't be the final say. It would have to, the select board would actually set the policies. I would see it falling more into a 4 on a normal routine basis. But I certainly defer to the committee.
Before we get into the discussion, we should, as we always do, make mention of a couple of things. First, we try to avoid outliers. And by that, we mean, if as we go through any of these factors, if once or twice during the course of the year, somebody might be involved in X, Y, or Z, we consider that to be an outlier. In other words, it's not the norm. It's not part of the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month duties and responsibilities or functionality of the job. And so it's a one-off. And the other thing we always talk about, of course, is that sometimes when we get stuck, when we are between a 4 and a 5 or between a 2 and a 3, we do have the opportunity to split it in half and rate it as a 2.5 or a 3.5 or 4.5 if necessary. So with that in mind, Tony, any thoughts on this?
I was looking at going with number 4.
Okay. John, any thoughts, questions?
No, my sense was 4 as well.
Diane?
Yeah, I think a 4 identifies, the planning that's involved in the programming and analysis of what the community is looking for. And I would definitely say a 4.
I would have, that was my first thought, but then Tracy, just talk to us a little bit about this policy formulation. I understand that policy formulation requires okay from the board of directors of the COA. But that said, how frequently is this individual involved in the formulation of, as it says, broad policies and long-term programs?
They have, this is something that's just come up in the last 2 weeks. They have no existing policies. As a matter of fact, one of the things that was brought to light was the fact that they weren't even technically a formalized committee. You may recall, we just adopted that at the last town meeting. So Cindy is working with her, the Mass Councils on Aging about looking at best practices and policies to put in a whole slew of or to bring forward a number of policies and proposals to kind of bring us up to date, if you will. Now, all of those will have to be approved by the Council on Aging and then brought forward to the Select Board for final approval. But she's looking at a comprehensive, proposal.
Okay. My sense is that might allow us to bump it up to a 4.5 or maybe even consider a 5. I'd throw that open to the, I mean, I'm not, I don't object to the 4 rating, but I'm just wondering if the somewhat regular, policy making role here might bump it up. Thoughts, Diane?
I don't see it rising to that level. I think a 4. I would hold at a 4.
Okay, thank you. John, thoughts?
Well, my sense is that it's her central job to be the vanguard regarding activities and suggest the direction to others, to the board, select board, as well as consult with the Mass Association. So I see it more as she's the principal gatherer of information rather than the actual director of direction.
So you're comfortable leaving it a 4?
Yeah, 4.5, whichever the board thinks is best. And
Okay,
aren't these organic, and as time passes, it can alter?
thank you. Tony, thoughts?
Yeah, I would keep it as a 4. Or as John would recommend also, I wouldn't mind going to a 4.5. But one thing I noticed at the beginning of reading this job description, that the number of staff at the Council of Aging, we're looking at 5 people, plus volunteers. I really don't know. I mean, the volunteers, that figure could be in the thousands. I really don't know. But this is a rather small coterie of people that the director certainly is responsible for. But I can't see working on the so-called policy formulation, which is I think interpreted to be more extensive than what's there. So I would stick with a 4.0. I could even go with 4.5.
Okay, well, looks like we're somewhere between the 4 and 4.5. Let's vote on it. Diane Doyle?
I would go with a 4 with the right to come back to it if need be.
Okay, Tony?
I would go 4.
John?
4.
Okay, and Mark Leckman, I'm a 4.5 on this one, so 4 carries it. With, as Diane said, the opportunity to review it, which we always do at the end to see if we're comfortable with the final rating. Thank you all. Next factor is education. I think we can cut right to the bottom line here. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in the job description and based upon what Tracy said earlier, I believe that you're of the opinion that a bachelor's level degree here is a strong preference, if not a prerequisite.
I am, yes.
Would you describe it as a prerequisite or close to it, or?
I would call it a prerequisite, yeah.
Okay.
I think for future hirings, I would ask that they
Mhm.
have a bachelor's degree in a related field.
Okay, very good. Doesn't require anything beyond that. No, okay. Thoughts, John Ferrara?
I would agree wholeheartedly.
Okay,
Uh,
Tony,
my
thought?
exper- my-
Oh, sorry.
So
Sorry
that's
about
it. My experience was relatively extensive over the last 18 months, and it's important work.
that question.
Needs to
Thank
grow.
you. Tony?
Yeah, it does. I was a little amazed that the wording in the job description said preferred. I would think it would be required. A bachelor's would, but since it's going to be becoming an actual requirement, then I think we'll looking at the rating. This one is 5.0.
Okay. Diane?
I would agree, a five.
Okay. Tracy, I think maybe the consensus here is you may want to reword that piece of the job description and change out preferred to required to be
Happy to do
consistent
that.
with the rating here,
Okay,
or at a minimum, strongly preferred, but it sounds like required is probably the right way to go here.
happy to do that, yep.
Okay, with that in mind, let's make the vote formal. John Ferrara,
5.
Tony,
5.
Diane,
5.
and Mark Leckman, 5. Experience. Do you have a minimum of 5 years work experience? And this is a job specific, relevant experience working within the elder community is what you're looking for here. Well, that would put it at a solid 4, which is 4 to 6 years. Are there any other considerations we have here, Tracy, or?
No, that would be the minimum for sure.
Okay. Do I see any questions or hands raised from the board? Any other discussion on this?
Nope.
All right, Tony Antico,
4.
John Ferrara,
4.
Diane Doyle,
4.
Mark Leckman, 4. Independent action or initiative. This refers to the initiative required to perform the duties and responsibilities of the job effectively. The creativity and original thought required by the job, and the amount of direction and control received from the supervisor, in this case Tracy, or by standard practices and precedents. A 3 is works under occasional supervision. A 4 is works within general direction and guidance. Also under 4, this individual plans and carries out activities to attain objectives, applies policies or widely accepted within the occupation of the profession. Assignments may include creative work and or innovation. A 5, this person would work independently on general assignments, plans and carries out broad assignments of a major department, often involving other related activities and disciplines. This individual would take actions without reference to superiors, except when policy changes are required, major investments are involved, or long-term programs are affected. And the highest category is a 6. This person works independently on a wide range of administrative and policy-making activities, plans and carries out major programs and plans for the entire town, typically does not receive directions on a regular basis, and the employee's work is checked only through consultation and agreement with others. Tracy, your thoughts?
5.5,
I'm sorry,
5.5,
based on,
somewhere between a 5 and a 6. I mean, she is the role is extremely independent. I mean, it's checking in with me periodically for updates. But again, I don't give her guidance for programming or initiatives or any of those types of things. And in this particular instance, at this time, again, certainly an outlier. But she's already been, kind of diving in headfirst to the Council on Aging building project.
Mhm.
She's been providing direction on PR and what they need. She worked directly with the architect in putting together the appropriate spaces. Again, no guidance from me, just here, you do
Right.
this, those types of things. So certainly called upon periodically to be doing those types of projects, but often daily working independently in general
Mhm.
assignments. So for sure a 5, probably a 5.5 on that one.
Tracy, is it fair for us to assume that you consider this to be a major department of the
Yes.
town?
Yes.
Okay, just want to clarify that.
Yep.
Thank you. Let's open it up to questions and or thoughts. Diane Doyle?
I think I would lean towards a 5. I'm looking at, kind of looking at other department heads and where that ranks in terms of independent action. I would say on target with carries out broad assignments of a major department, takes action without reference to supervisors, except for when there are major investments involved. I wouldn't see that as a unilateral thing. I mean, she's gonna have to come before, some level of management if she's going to be moving outside of, basically just in terms of long-term investments or big programs, or, I mean, she still has to have the oversight of what she is doing at the, with the programming. So I think it's on par with a 5.
Okay, thank you. John Ferrara, thoughts?
I would agree with Diane. I mean, there's a broad responsibility, and her job is to primarily, identify opportunities and change, and then consult with others.
Mhm.
I would go with the 5.
Tony, your thoughts?
They talk in the 5 block, they talk about working independently on general assignments, but listening to like Tracy and other people, it seems that the assignments would be generated by herself. I don't think she waits upon the board or even, Tracy or anybody else to say, well, she's not given assignments. It seems to me, to create her own, she's got the skill set to create her own programs, etc. For that reason, and it's very specific to this kind of a position. For that reason, I would agree with Tracy that it's 5.5.
I have similar thoughts, Tony. I'm looking at the first and third bullet points under 6. And I think this job seems to apply to both of those bullet points. This individual plans and carries out major programs and plans for the entire town. And I'm not talking about the entire population of 6,000 plus people, but the entire town, has pockets of elders that require these services. So I consider it to be a town-wide role, even though it doesn't serve, every single resident. And the third bullet point typically does not receive directions on a regular basis. I think, as Tracy's already indicated, this individual often works very independently with guidance from above, but certainly does not receive directions regularly. And so it's certainly not a 6 in my mind, but I agree with Tony. It has 6-like elements embedded in it, which is why I would lean towards the 5.5 here. Other thoughts? Okay, let's vote on it.
To apply the mathematics to, the over and under, I did some research 6 months ago for personal reasons, and there are roughly 1,500 seniors in the town of Newbury. So it's a small category. I would think we're more real estate than citizenship. And I don't know, you measure the task of a managing director for Council on Aging for 1,400 people spread out over roughly 30 square miles.
Yeah.
That's a job in itself, and she is identifying all kinds of sources of money and grants, and she has some myriad responsibilities.
Mhm.
How much it's on her plate or those that she reports to, I'm not qualified to comment. I'd
Thank you,
have to
John.
follow Tracy's evaluation on that one.
Thank you. Diane, any final thoughts before we vote?
No,
Okay. That said, let's take it to a vote. Anthony,
5.5.
John Ferrara,
5.5, yes.
Diane,
I'll defer to Tracy on this one, 5.5.
and Mark Lechman, 5.5. Consequence of errors. This assesses the likelihood and the probable effect of errors on the job, and it considers who's affected. Is it a department? Is it somebody in the department, the entire department, the town, or the public? The extent of losses to the town, which could result from inappropriate decisions or judgments. Normal versus extreme errors. How easily the errors can be corrected, so forth and so on. A 3 is errors affect the work of others, but generally are not damaging to the town. Easily corrected, easily identified, may cause some time loss. They may have an adverse impact on the public or employee relations. A 4, errors cause substantial identifiable losses beyond damage and waste as a result. And we're not just talking about monetary here, obviously. Could be monetary, it could be reputational, it could be relationships between the town and its elder community, so forth and so on. May cause substantial delays in services or programs. Could mean a deterioration in public and employee relations. Could possibly result in physical injury. A 5 is errors cause serious short-term breakdowns. Serious delays in services with uncoordinated efforts or shortages of vital parts or components. May cause commitment or withholding of funds, inadequate analysis, or poor planning. And a 6 is errors may cause long-term negative consequences to the town with little opportunity to correct the errors once they're made. May cause major loss of departmental or town prestige because the results become public. May cause a fatal or incapacitating injury. Tracy, thoughts?
I had this one at a 3.5. There are components of 4 where there could be, personal injury, if they were doing their wellness checks. I try to think of different circumstances if they were doing wellness checks and they forgot and they left someone off the list and, but again, those would be outliers, things like that. But I had it between a 3 and a 4, a solid 3 for sure, maybe a 3.5.
Thank you. John Ferrara, questions, thoughts?
Yeah, that was I think Tracy just answered. I wrote down earlier, history with experience. What experiences have we had where there were consequences? And I don't know of any, but Tracy would know of them. But you think about it, we're porting elderly, Meals on Wheels, driving here, there. There's all kinds of liability issues when you're moving a senior population around from any level of liability. It's quite heavy. So I'd follow Tracy's lead, 3.5.
Thank you. Tony Antico?
Liability seems to be a pervasive blanket on everything, which is good. People are constantly looking at if something happens, can I or the town, be seen to be liable. But I would agree with Tracy on this one, that it has elements of 4 in it. I would certainly be willing to go to 3.5 here.
Thank you, Tony. Diane?
I think I would agree with a 3.5. the things that come to mind for me are, you know, what I've come to understand on the Council on Aging is they provide resources and they provide information for that population of people who are looking to figure out, you know, a whole host of things. So I think there's a resource component. I also think that under 4, identifiable deterioration in public and employee relations. I think if we think about the Council on Aging, there's nothing, you know, worse than having a poor view of that amongst the senior population of people. I think, you know, there are definitely elements of 4. I don't think it's a full 4, so I would go with a 3.5.
And I would agree with all. I can't imagine any other population of town which has the potential to be a hot button issue, you know, whether it relates to services and programs, outreach, the need for COA expansion headquarters. The COA is front and center these days, and I think will be for the foreseeable future. And I think it's critically important that this individual is on top of and just, you know, squared away as much as he or she could be, in making sure that there are no identifiable issues in town. So I would agree it has elements of 4, but I'm certainly fine with that 3.5 as well. So with that in mind, if there's no other commentary, let's vote on it. Tony Antico,
3.5.
John Ferrara,
3.5.
Diane Doyle,
3.5.
Mark Leckman, 3.5. Thank you. Contacts. This refers to the importance to the organization of the working relationships required of this position. These contacts can be internal or external to the organization. These contacts can take a variety of forms, face-to-face, on the phone, public appearances, media, Zoom discussions. What are the purposes of these contacts? What is the importance to the town? These contacts aren't just limited to residents. It could be elected officials, members of the town boards, appointees, co-workers, and so forth. It covers a variety of purposes and complexity: advising, coaching, disciplinary, common courtesy is a minimum. Of course, that's expected here. 2 is routine with occasional discussions outside the immediate area. 3 is frequent and important contact beyond the immediate associates, regular contact with public, town officials, and board. 4 is frequent and important for the purposes of clarifying procedures and resolving issues, using interpersonal skills to clarify the issues and to and to communicate information clearly, requires in-depth knowledge of the subject being discussed. 5, frequent and important, often around the topic of deep personal concern for an individual. Tax abatements, compliance with state and federal regulations, in this case, any federal, Massachusetts, or Newbury bylaw issues that are related to the elderly population in town. Successful resolution of a 5 would result in a stakeholder feeling respected and heard, even if the ultimate decision goes against them. 6 is contacts are vital to the viability of the town. Contacts require constant maintenance and development to avoid being blindsided by important financial or reputational issues. Thoughts?
You know, when I first reviewed this one, I thought for many of the items that both you and Diane had just spoken about in the last one, I would say 6 all day long, completely. The only thing is the last bullet, contacts require constant maintenance. When I'm looking at 6, I'm applying it to the relationships that the director has with the constituents, with that population, that 1,500 people, with that group. It's constant. They're talking about things that are very private, they're financial, they're helping them establish doctors, they're helping them with income taxes, getting grants and programming to assist them in so many manners, health, finance, all of those things. And not to mention, like you had said, Diane, if we're not doing it effectively, the reputational harm that will come to the community, because that's a population that gets out and that's vocal, and that you want to ensure that we're treating our senior population with respect and really thinking in terms of providing those public services that are so important to that group. So initially my gut was 6, but certainly, if welcome the comments of the committee.
I would also suggest that in addition to that population of, John, I think you said 1,500, I think it's fair to assume that the rest of the adult population of this town looks just as critically on the town's respect for, treatment of, appreciation for its elderly population. And I can't imagine any role where there are as many eyeballs watching, the performance.
No doubt about it. And that population you referenced are also in the queue.
Right.
No question. Other thoughts, questions? Diane?
You all have articulated much clearer what I was trying to say in my previous comments. I would see this as a solid 5. I think frequent and important. Obviously, these relationships and these contacts are very important and vital to, the mission of what she's charged with doing. Often around a topic of deep personal concern for individual stakeholders, and she's dealing with individuals who are trying to work through issues with their seniors or work through, she oversees the senior work-off program as well that the town administers. So she's receiving people and coordinating with volunteers and placing them in roles here in the town to assist other departments, and also allow the senior to receive a tax credit on their tax bill. Successful resolution will result in a stakeholder feeling respected and heard. And I think ultimately that's what that population is looking for. I mean, I think, rising it to a 6 and calling it vital to the viability of the town, I don't see it as a solid 6 in terms of the viability of the town, but I do see it as of utmost importance in the population that she's dealing with and what her position is with the town.
Thank you, Diane. Tony?
I don't see this as a solid 6, but I certainly see it as a solid 5.5. Again, it's part of the soul of the town, and it sounds like this person is well aware of that, and will continue to follow that line. So I would go with the 5.5.
Thank you, Tony. If there are no other comments or questions, let's bring it to a vote. John Ferrara,
Give it a 5.
Diane Doyle,
I'm gonna hold it a 5.
Tony Antico,
5.5.
and Mark Leckman, 5.5. Let's hold on that one then, and we'll come back to it. And you get a hold on that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Supervision. This there are two elements of supervision. One is just the sheer number of people, the scope. The first one is the character of the supervision. What type of supervisory role is it? How limited or expansive is it? Does it supervise people doing similar work? Let's look at the various numbers here. 3 is limited supervision. This person does not have full supervisory responsibility. I think we can blow beyond that. That is not the case here. A 4 is supervisors positions performing related work. It includes recruitment, training, coaching, prioritizing, allocating, completing performance appraisals, recommending terminations, etc. 5 is general management, may have supervision over a department or several units within the same department performing similar work, and may also have subordinate supervisors, not necessarily, but may. A 6 is, again, policy direction. And I think we've already described that there are some policy elements here, but this person is not the final say relative to policy, correct? Okay, so my thinking is that it's somewhere in the 4 or 5 range, but let me open it up to thoughts, Tony and Tico.
To me, it sounds like a 5. She has it's a small staff, but she has general management over the entire staff. So I would go with a 5.
Thank you. Diane Doyle?
I would see it as a 4, leaning towards a 4.5. That's just my,
I'm sorry, so you said
I-
you saw it was a,
I would say it's a 4, maybe a 4.5. I don't think it's a 5 in terms of, I mean, it is over a department. It's not one that would have subordinate supervisors. I think I'd go with a 4.5.
thank you. John Ferrara?
I would agree on 2 levels. She's got a small staff, but there are the Friends of the Council on Aging and the Board of Directors that she has to deal with, as well as the Select Board. Somewhere between 4.5 and 5, but I'd stay at the 4.5. I have sensed Diane's correct.
Let me ask Tracy, when you think about well, actually, Diane, if you've got the entire spectrum of ratings in front of you there.
Yep.
When we're looking at other senior managers in town who have departmental responsibilities and a
Yep.
staff of, Tracy, what is it, 4 or 5, is it? The staff size, 5? Did I hear that earlier, 5?
She's got 1, 2, 3. She's got 4, right, Jane?
So she
She's got
has,
4, and then the van driver.
well, she has the program coordinator, she has the van driver, she also has the Meals on Wheels coordinator, and then there's the outreach. So that would be
So 4 and volunteers.
4 and volunteers.
All right, I would like to give that some consideration in previous subcommittee, classification subcommittee meetings. We have given some consideration to the volunteer population if that is a quote unquote regular occurrence. Again, we don't want it to be an outlier. If twice a year, this person has, 3 volunteers that they also coordinate responsibility for, that's one thing. If, however, on a regular basis, in addition to FTEs, full-time employees, or part-time for that matter, if this person regularly coordinates, oversees the activities of, multiple volunteers regularly, to me, that would bump it up into the 5 category. And again, remember, a 5, one of the bullet points is it may have subordinate supervisors. It's not a requirement of a 5. So Tracy, talk about the volunteer population and how frequently this person oversees their activities.
Yeah, that would not be an outlier in my opinion, because there is a cadre of volunteers. There are Meals on Wheels volunteers, there's programming volunteers. She does volunteers who will do, yoga or whatever, whatever they happen to be, the art classes, knitting classes, whatever they've got going on. They have volunteers helping them with that. They actually, I've been to some of the appreciation dinners or parties that they have, and there are well over 100 people. So she may not be directing 20 in a day, but she is directing volunteers on a daily basis.
On a regular basis, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would just ask, maybe we throw that into the pot of ingredients here when we're considering whether this is maybe a 4.5 versus a 5. That's my thought. Other thoughts, questions, observations? If not, we'll vote. Tony Antico,
4.5.
Diane Doyle,
I mean, I think Tracy makes a good argument for 5. I guess I'll stay at the 4.5 for now.
John Ferrara,
4.5, 4.5, yes.
all right, and I'll settle on a 4.5 as well. And the second element within supervision is scope, which is, again, the number of employees. And this is, again, where we look primarily at the full and part-time employees within the department, but also do take into consideration the volunteer population as we've done in the past. So if you go straight on the employees in the department, it would be a 2, right? 3 to 5. And then the question is, how much of a factor, if at all, do we want to consider the fact that there is regularly oversight of a large population of volunteers? Would you say, Tracy, that this person, by and large, oversees the activities of more volunteers than probably anyone else in town?
yes,
By a long shot, I would think.
yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
with the exception of COVID right now and the volunteers, helping with our staffing and clinics and things like that. Other than that, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, well, we're not going to count them all, but the question is, should they be counted as additional oversight, given the fact that it's regular? Throw that open. John Ferrari, your thoughts?
I patrol the corridors at the round school a lot the last 18 months to 2 years, and there's just a ton of activity that goes on there. It is a busy household, entirely too small.
Mhm.
And it basically, I'd give it the tolerating.
I'm sorry, John, do you give it the what?
A tolerating than the 3.5. I'd go to a 4.5 to 5, somewhere in there,
Mhm.
when you're dealing with scope.
Okay, thank you. Tony, your thoughts?
Yeah, just a question. Do we have sort of a rough idea on, approximate idea on the numbers of volunteers? I mean, as all of these activities, are these around, 20 people, 30 people? Any idea?
In terms of annually, I would say there's well over 100.
Hmm.
On any given day, there may be, 1, 2, 3 different events will draw out more. Like we had the COA coffee truck, and I think there were, 3 or 4 volunteers that joined us on that event. So different events bring out larger numbers of volunteers, but I do know at those appreciation events that they have for the volunteers, there's well over 100 people in there.
Well, my way of thinking, I think the volunteers, in a certain way, have to be looked at as certainly as part of her staff. If she didn't have the volunteers, the program wouldn't be as effective as apparently it is. So
He couldn't even get the letter out. She'd,
Right.
but I mean, typically I've gone in there and there are 15 people sitting around the round table stuffing envelopes.
Yeah, in my mind, I think this is one of these situations where the scope of the supervision matches the character of the supervision. Because of the large the large volunteer population, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we just we just came down to the 4.5 for the character of the supervision. Is that correct?
Yes.
4.5, I would like to see it at the same 4.5. Means on a fairly regular basis, this person has, got a dozen people coming and going between, again, not necessarily every single day, but when you factor in the 5 full and part-time employees, and you probably double that on a regular basis in terms of some of these bigger programs, feels to me like a staff of, somewhere in that, 8 to 10 range, 8 to a dozen. So I'd like to see the 4.5, but other thoughts, questions? If not, we'll vote.
Mark, I would agree with you. I think the more I'm learning about different positions and so forth, I mean, she does have a staff we've identified as 4. I mean, I can think of the senior work off, I can think of the volunteers at all these events. And looking at it, I would definitely say that it deserves at least a couple of grades bump. So I was thinking of 4. When I look at the supervisory scope for other department managers, I mean, it's anywhere from, and I think this is unique because some of the other department manager roles clearly don't have the level of volunteers. A conservation agent doesn't have a volunteer staff. But I think it does rise to, I was gonna say a 4.
Thank you. Other thoughts or observations before we vote? I'm gonna switch it up here a little bit. I'm gonna vote first on this one. Mark Leckman, 4.5. Tony?
4.5.
John?
4.5.
Diane?
I would go with the 4.5 to match the supervision with the character.
Okay, thank you all. Physical demands. This can be literally physical demands. It can be, visual / physical demands. How often, as we often talk about in this element, how often is somebody glued to a computer screen or a laptop, or which can be draining as well. Psychological stress are not, and complexity factor are not rated here. This is strictly physical and or, again, the physical based on lifting, lugging stuff around versus, or also including visual attention, meaning sitting in front of a screen. 2 is some fatigue may require infrequent bursts of physical activity, lifting, climbing, shoveling. Visual concentration is 20 to 50% of the time in front of a monitor. Also sitting or standing at the workstation in one position with a minimum amount of movement for moderate periods of time. 3 is moderate fatigue, frequently moving about and some heavy physical effort, pulling, pushing, lifting. Activity may cause moderate physical exertion or fatigue, standing and or sitting for fixed positions for long periods of time. Visual concentration greater than 50% in front of a monitor. Frequent fatigue, considerable amount of physical effort with limited opportunities to rest except for scheduled breaks. Or 6, extended strenuous physical work. Tracy, how do you see this person?
I would say about a 2.5. There's not as significant amount of the visual concentration, like there's not 50% of time in front of a computer screen, but there are a lot of activities that require a lot of setup. We were setting up tents, we're doing, different things for different activities. So I would say 2.5 for that one.
Okay, thank you. John Farrar?
I would agree. That pretty limited physical requirement.
Thank you. Tony?
I agree also, 2.5.
Diane?
Yep, I would agree, 2.5.
All right, I'm in the same place. So with that in mind, let's make it official. Tony Antico,
2.5.
Diane Doyle,
2.5.
John Ferrara,
2.5.
Mark Leckman, 2.5. Working conditions as it relates to employee safety and comfort. It includes things like the severity of the workplace hazard, if at all. We assume that all reasonable and legal occupational health and safety practices are in place with that in mind. A 1 is agreeable with few disadvantages, standard office environment. A 2 is generally agreeable. There may be the occasional disadvantage. Maybe a space could be noisier or dirtier than normal, could be at a shop or at a loading dock. Bothersome odors may be present. There are potential accidents or illnesses based on minor injuries. May require occasional outdoor work. A 3 is mostly agreeable with some minor disadvantages that are usually present. That would include regular exposure to heat, cold, humidity, dirt, oil, noxious odors, uncomfortable elements. There may be moderately dangerous materials involved. Could be hazardous chemicals, so forth and so on. I don't think we have to get beyond that, do we, in this?
No.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think so. Tracy, your thoughts? What is the regular work environment here?
In terms of just the physical space, and I think they're in a safe environment. It's not certainly not disagreeable in that respect. So I kind of pegged it at a 2. But then I went further, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate for, I think it falls under working conditions, but I'm not sure it's the intent of this classification. Like, how about the disadvantage they're at because of the inadequate space? So they have to limit their programming because they don't have the spaces they need to offer more programming. So I kind of thought it might rise to a 2.5, but then I'm just not sure if that's what this classification is when they talk about working conditions.
Mhm.
If it's just the work or the work to do the programming and the services that they should be offering.
Right.
So maybe I'm looking into it too deeply, but
It feels a little like it's beyond the scope to me.
okay.
But again, personal opinion here. I understand the point you're making and
Yep.
I agree with it that there are limitations here, but I think the spirit of this element is, what is the physical space like that the individual works in and around, and how disagreeable, if at all, is it?
In that
And
case, I'd say 2.
Yeah, and the tight quarters, knock wood, is if not short term, let's say it's temporary, and hopefully better days are coming there. So, so you're looking at it as a 2. All right, let me open it up. Diane, your thoughts?
I would agree. I think it's a 2. I look at what the definition of working conditions is. I think it was different when we were rating things like maybe the police when they were in the basement where the conditions were of more of a health issue. So I would say a 2.
By the way, I assume this role does have occasional outdoor activities.
It
And I
does.
don't mean just getting into a van, going to a shopping mall. I mean, is some work done with the others outside, whether it's exercise programs or
It is now.
walking tours or?
It is
okay.
now. Yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you. John Farrell,
I would give it a 2.
Tony, any questions, thoughts from you?
No, I would agree on the 2.
Okay, let's vote on it then. Diane Doyle,
2.
John Ferraro,
2.
Tony Antico,
2.
Mark Leckman, 2. And that brings us to the end of the standard elements here. And then Tracy, what we always do at the very end here, well, I'm sorry, we have to get back to when we put a hold on one, right, Diane?
Well, I just think if we were, once we determine what the rating is, if it's close one way or the other, if there was anything we wanted to go back and revisit. I think, was it the contacts?
Contacts, yes.
We want to go through that now or just look at where it sits and see if it makes a difference? Is that what you're saying, Diane?
Yes. I don't think it's gonna make a difference. I think that's what we more or less say is if we get to the end of the rating and the rating is literally on the the boundary or the outline, right at the maximum, then we say, okay, maybe is there something that, and when we look at it comparatively to other department managers,
Right.
if we feel that it doesn't sit where it should within the scope of the organization, then I think sometimes we might go back and visit that.
Okay.
So
Got it. Thank you. I have a second page here. So at the very end, what we always do is we have to remember that in addition to the numerical rating, whether it's 16 or 17 or an 18, we also have to look at the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. And then we decide, if there's anything, any other ingredients we want to throw into the mix. Are there any other considerations that would be special in the case of this role? The volume of work involved, the confidentiality involved, the accuracy required, the duties assumed. Again, all of this is part and parcel of every role that we rate, but is there something that we would consider to be extraordinary here? Or in some cases, it's the population of available talent out there. Is there anything that would cause us to move this from a 0.1 to a 0.2 or a 0.3? So let me open that up to discussion. Thoughts, anyone? Well, Tracy, let me start with you. Anything that we've just mentioned there you think is extraordinary in this case? Volume of work, confidentiality, accuracy, duties assumed?
I think the confidentiality would rise to the top, but then when I look in comparison to some of the other departmental functions, I think they're probably on the same level.
Right.
So I think I don't see anything jumping out.
Thank you. I may be missing the last page of this. Was other considerations. Is there one page or two? I've only got one here with four notations: volume, confidentiality, accuracy, duties. Is there a second page of this?
Yeah, second page, market recruitment,
That's what I thought. Okay.
technical terminology, incumbent qualifications, and stress.
Okay. We've talked about the need for a bachelor's level degree, and of course, you're requiring somebody who's got job-specific background. You said you interviewed a number of candidates. Fair to say that it's not a pool that has no available talent in it. You advertised, you got decent response.
I did. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't, put that in the same classification as something like an assessor
Right.
or a town accountant. They're fewer and further between, so.
Okay. So the question is, does anyone in the subcommittee see any mitigating factors here that would automatically, require us to bump it from a 0.1 higher?
I don't.
Nor do I. John?
I do not.
Tony?
No.
Okay, good. So with that in mind, Diane, where do we sit at the moment?
So it came in at an 18, which puts it on par with the library director and conservation agent. And it previously was a 16.2. Sorry, 16.1.
1.
16.1. So this brings
So
us to
what
an
did it
8.
It came up with an
18.1?
18,
18,
yes.
sorry.
And that puts it on par with two other positions in town, the library director and the conservation agent.
How does that feel, Tracy, in terms of, being members of your senior staff?
That feels good. That feels very comfortable.
Mhm. Certainly in the case of the library director and this role, we're talking about two of the most critical components of the town population. Similar sized staffs, would you say?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. The conservation agent is very different in terms of nature and department and all that, but nonetheless, an important role in your mind, so.
I can see how they would both fall into the same classification because although it's different staffing levels and such, responsibility and in terms of enforcement would bring conservation into that
Right.
level. So I do feel comfortable with that.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? Great work all. Thank you, everybody. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the subcommittee.
Motion?
Second,
Second,
Any discussion? Hearing none. Diane Doyle,
Yes.
John Ferrara?
That-
I'm sorry, was that a yes, John?
Oh, yes, yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Tony Antico?
yes,
Mark Leckman, yes. Tracy, anything else from you?
That's all I have for today. Thank you all very
Great.
much.
Thanks to everybody. Good to see you all. Stay healthy. We'll talk to you all soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
by all.